Hello, today we are discussing generation rent, the generation of young people being priced out of the property market that are subsequently looking for not just a house to rent, but a home. Joining me to debate all aspects of the topic are Robert Bolwell from Dutton Gregory Solicitors, Sean Hooker from My Deposits and Kevin Allen from the National Private Tenants Organisation. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hi. Kevin, first up, who are we talking about when we refer to generation rent?
Well, it's a term that's commonly used to refer to people under the age of 30 who in different economic climate might have been first-time buyers. I read some statistics recently and they say the average age of first-time buyers is now 35-year-olds. But I think we can broaden that out to all ages of renters and personal circumstances, people who don't have any option but to rent privately, and that's why it's important that we have a very high-quality private rented sector.
Okay, and presumably the 35 figure as well, outside, within London, I imagine that figure is actually even higher as well.
It probably is, yeah.
Exactly. Robert,
yeah.
So with this rise of generation rent and the requirement of tenants for longer term residence, what are the challenges that landlords face?
We've got to do some serious rethinking here. You've got to understand, Julian, the entire industry at the moment is really predicated on the idea of relatively short-term lets. 6-month assured short-hold tenancies, 12-month assured short-hold tenancies. If we're talking longer term, we're talking 1, 2, 3, even 5-year rents, things got to change. We need differences in our tenancy agreements, we need rent review clauses, we perhaps need to look at the way managing agents charge landlords for finding their tenants. And we've also got to look at the way we fund properties, because a lot of lenders at the moment don't like the idea of long-term rents. They want landlords to rent out for 6 or 12-month terms, and that's not going to happen. So a lot of changes across the board as we go forward.
Okay. Sean, with the rise of accidental landlords and of course generation rent, what do you think is actually going to happen to the market going forwards?
Well, I think first thing we have to realise is this is not temporary. This is going to last for the foreseeable future, and there's going to be a sizable number of people who are going to be renting and for longer. So therefore the market's got to adapt, and the market's got to adapt in a way to provide the aspirations of the tenants. And there is an increasing number of aspirational tenants now, people who are choosing to go into the rental market because it suits their lifestyle and the way that they want to choose things there. You can go and live next to a railway station that's near to your work rather than have to be in the margins now because that's the only thing you could afford to buy. The market has the opportunity.
So you could, as a young person, for example, you could enjoy those years of city centre living, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And lifestyles change, and then you move to a different type of property later on, that suits you. So it gives the flexibility and choice. And we're still talking about tenants as being in a disadvantaged position. Not all tenants are in disadvantaged positions. A lot of them are now choosing, and the market's got to learn to adapt to that. Okay.
Now we've had a new government report out, a new report into rating the government's progress in this area, and it's used a traffic light system. Would you give it a red, an amber, or a green, Robert?
I think I'm firmly in the red camp. I mean, we've had an awful lot of legislation from this government since it came to power. Not all of it has been joined up, to be honest. But over and above that, if you look back over the last 10 or 15 years, so we've got more than one government to blame for this, we have had a plethora of reports of one type or another. And most of the items in these reports, good items, haven't actually been implemented. Someone's got to be prepared at government level to put hand in pocket and come out with a bit more money to help the sector, which I accept is probably not going to happen in the present economic climate. So definitely a red.
Sean, red, amber or green?
I'd have to give it an amber. As with anything with governments, the intentions are usually very good, but the implementation leaves a lot to be desired. But coming from a piece of legislation ourselves in tenancy deposit protection, you'd say on the whole that that's been a success. There were plenty of other things in the 2004 Housing Act, for example, that were not so much of a success.
And what specifically do you mean?
I would say things like the home condition reports.
Yes,
which came and died a very painful death. So, and that was part of the same legislation that brought tenancy deposits in. People said that wasn't going to work. I think it's been a very good success.
Kevin, red, amber or green?
Being charitable, Julian, I'm probably midway between amber and red.
Right.
Like Robert said, there's been a lot of good reports, like the Rugg report, etc., where the recommendations weren't implemented, and there is a raft of good legislation that exists which isn't being enforced. And in addition, there is some need for new legislation in some areas relating to security of tenure and affordability and minimum standards for accommodation. So I think there's a lot to be done.
Okay, Robert, this all seems quite negative on landlords, but what about protecting landlords through further legislation? What do you think needs to happen there?
I think the balance is probably about right at the moment. As Kevin said, we've got an awful lot of legislation at the moment. I think one area that landlords do feel very vulnerable is when they do have a difficult or a defaulting tenant. So we have the legislation, we have the procedures, but we also have incredible delays in our court system.
Yeah, it could take me absolutely nice.
So, you know, if, for example, I want to issue a possession warrant tomorrow in the West London County Court, it's going to be 8 weeks before the bailiff actually turns up. Now, trying to sell that to a landlord who's losing rent but is still having to pay his mortgage company is difficult to explain. So, you know, everything's in place, but I just think we're not perhaps funding it as well as we should. But again, we're back to the economy, and, you know, housing is simply one sector in an economy with every sector screaming out for more resources.
Okay, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. We've run out of time. My thanks to Sean, Robert and Kevin for joining us. For more information and advice for landlords, please go to www.totallandlordinsurance.co.uk/resources or check out the Total Landlord Facebook page. Goodbye.